The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
On this week's Court TV podcast, the killer girlfriend murder trial of Ezra McCandless has come to a dramatic close with a guilty verdict. We'll break down what happened and then dig into the shocking developments in the retrial of NFL star turned convicted rapist Kellen Winslow II.
This is the Court TV podcast with Vinnie and Seema Iyer.
Welcome to the Court TV podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Vinnie Politan. I'm a former prosecutor sitting across from, that's the way I say it. Sitting across from me is Seema Iyer. She also was on the good side for a while before she went to the dark side.
And I was in the Bronx, babe.
Yeah, you were a Bronx prosecutor, which is
Jenny
not
from
easy.
the block.
Which is not easy.
Oh, so great. You know, I have to say, the Bronx DA's office, best job of my life. I love Court TV. It is a delight and pleasure to look at your face every day. But being a Bronx district attorney, I was so proud. I loved the community. I loved being a DA.
Right. But then you became a criminal defense attorney. And so is the case. And that's why I think on this show, on this podcast, you get a good perspective because I still see the world as a prosecutor.
Do you really with everything?
Everything. That's the way I see everything.
I find you to be quite fair.
Fair.
In many circumstances. I don't think you're completely with the prosecution. There's a lot of cases that we've covered where you side with the defense or you see that perhaps the prosecution have made errors in their case.
Right, because I'm a true prosecutor. I'm a seeker of the truth and justice, which is what prosecutors are supposed to do, and I hold them up to that standard, and when they don't meet that standard, I attack.
You attack.
I attack them. Like Knife Fong in the Duke LaRape case. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, last week, we promised our listeners that we would talk about the killer girlfriend on the stand. And we're going to talk about it because she was riveting. I just could not stop listening and analyzing every word that came out of Ezra McCandless's mouth. Let's take a listen to Ezra on direct examination.
What happens when, you decided to name the groin. Did you actually do it?
Yes.
What happens then?
He reacts and he drops the knife at that point.
When he drops the knife, what do you do?
Instantly, I grab the knife and I've used my arm to pull myself into the footwell. And that's when everything really starts to happen.
When she says everything starts to happen, what she means, that's when I murder him.
Well, she left that part out.
Yeah.
Okay? But
stabbed him 16 times.
Here's my problem with her from the jump of her testimony. Why doesn't she sound upset, emotional, angry, something? Give me something. But she is just, it is like she's reading a script.
It is, and it's something that I think she's rehearsed in her mind and prepared for. Here's the thing. She is claiming that she had to kill another human being to save her own life. This had to be the most dramatic, most horrifying day of her entire life.
Absolutely.
And it just didn't play out that way. It did not play out that way on the stand. I didn't believe it. I didn't sense it. And I've seen a lot of testimony from a lot of defendants. The person she reminds me most of was Jodi Arias.
That's right. That's right. A lot of people have been saying that. Everybody's been saying that. Completely outside of their own skin. And I've seen women in court testify about such things, about being attacked and having to fight back. And usually before their testimony even starts, they just start bawling. They are shaking. There is something. This woman was cool as a cucumber. Now, okay, some good things about Ezra McCandless is that she is clearly very bright. She was very respectful of both sides. She answered the questions.
Good bone structure.
Good.
Bone structure is very good.
The makeup was well applied.
The makeup was great. And
our makeup and hair team even endorse
her
makeup. It was great.
That was a big part of the case. She made
her
emotion before the judge to
for
have the
eyeshadow.
Eyeshadow. For the makeup, which I don't think helps her. It looked like she looked fine, but ultimately it did not make her out to be what she was alleging she was, which was a victim.
Right. I don't want to see lip gloss. I want to see crying. I want to see fear. I want to see all of that. Now,
take me to the moment in your testimony. This is the worst day of your life. You need to take me there for me to believe you, because so much of the physical evidence and the fact that you've lied in the past is contrary to me believing you. So you want me to believe you. Tell me a story that sounds real.
And at some point, you expected her to maybe break. She was on the stand for hours. I think the direct was at least a few hours. The cross was a few hours. I think the cross spilled over to the next day.
Right.
So you would think that at some point, the tears and the emotion and the exhaustion and the fear and the remorse even for the loss of life and the looking at Alex Woodworth's family, something would set in, and it never did. And even on cross, she remained cool. Let's listen to some of Ezra on cross.
You didn't tell law enforcement that your car was back stuck on that mud road or that farm road, correct?
Yes.
You didn't tell the law enforcement officers that first got there that you had just stabbed Alex Woodworth a number of times, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't tell Mr. Wayne, the paramedic, that there was this other person that was lying there with a bunch of stab wounds in him, did you?
No.
Right. Didn't tell him that maybe Alex was dead or dying there or needed help, did you?
No.
So she answers the questions, but what's underneath that question, Vinny? Underneath that question is testimony from experts that Alex Woodworth could have been alive for up to 30 minutes after she left him. Also, keep in mind, it was 5 to 8 minutes from the crime scene to Don Sippel's house where she went, and that's walking or maybe walking fast. So there was time to go to Don Sippel's house, call 911, get someone to save Alex Woodworth's life. Then he could be alive. He could be in the hospital. They could do something called a hospital arraignment, and they can arrest his ass for attacking her, if that was true.
Right. Or she could have told Mr. Sippel that, listen, I just escaped from this horrible attack. You need to call police. You need to protect me. Do you have a gun? Do you have anything? Because this guy may be following me here and maybe trying to finish me off. And none of that plays out either.
No, none of it. And it's still, as
it's a story that evolved. And that's what we keep hearing. Like, her story evolved. Like, she had memories that somehow
they
didn't
were
come out.
They were like locked in a box.
They were locked in a box.
You need a key to open it.
Yeah. And the key
Nobody had the key.
The key is a murder trial. And then now you've got to change your story. Here's the problem that I have with her and a lot of other criminal defendants at trial is that their memories change and evolve. But every they change and evolve, the memories get better for their defendant and worse for the prosecution.
Isn't that convenient?
Every single time. I want one of these repressed memories to come back that actually, oh my goodness, that makes me look more guilty. I better repress that again. I better repress it. It never happens. The memory always gets better. And that's why you've got to take a huge grain of salt when you listen to the testimony of someone whose story has changed for the better.
You know, I think some of the value that we bring to not only Court TV, but this podcast is that we have seen so much. We've seen so many defendants testify. We've handled so many cases. And I think people sometimes don't even believe me, but I really think I have a sixth sense for when someone's telling the truth on the stand. And there are clients I have, like the minute they start talking, I think, oh, geez. Oh,
it's not good.
He's lying. He's not telling the truth. And I'm screwed. And there's something, this is interesting, actually. You know about this, the whole narrative thing, right? So if you're a criminal defense attorney and you know your client is getting up there to lie, your option is to just say, what's your name? John Doe. And do you have something to say to the jury? And then you just leave it open and you just stand there.
Right, because you cannot allow your client
to
knowingly perjure him or herself.
Right. And sometimes that's what you do. But the thing with Ezra is when she was talking to the cops, and you remember there was that moment where she said Alex was outside the car, and then the cop said to her, no, he was found inside the car. In her hesitation, I could feel she realized that she screwed up. And she realized it was like a self-check that was happening with Ezra. And that translated to Ezra on the stand. She didn't do a great job, but did it reflect in the verdict?
Well, I believe so. I mean, ultimately, when a criminal defendant testifies, the nature of the trial changes to a certain extent, especially in a self-defense case. Do they or don't they believe Ezra McCandless? Well, that was reflected in the verdict, and we're going to talk about that next. Was justice served?
Follow Court TV live over the air, uninterrupted. If you're watching television with an antenna, just rescan your channels now to add Court TV. And go to CourtTV.com to see the exact channel position and more ways to watch Court TV in your area.
The most dramatic moment on television is the verdict in a murder trial.
Yes.
It absolutely is. And that's what we do at Court TV. Another reason to watch us on Court TV, not just listen to our podcast. But in the Ezra McCandless case, it was really incredibly dramatic, the moment, because it's a self-defense case. She testified. She told her story. Did the jury believe her? Did they not? This was a trial that took 13 days of testimony.
Yeah.
13 days. Was it over 500 exhibits, over 50 witnesses, so much for this jury to consider. I was expecting a long deliberation.
So was I. And the night the verdict came in was a crazy night here at Court TV. It was a crazy night.
It absolutely was. But they came back for this verdict in just over 3 hours, which to me was surprising, was shocking. Take a listen.
Mr. McCandless, please rise. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ezra J. McCandless, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in the information. And the answer to the special verdict question is yes, use a dangerous weapon. And you may be seated.
Wow. And here's the part of that verdict that stood out to me, because our cameras were on her, and you can see all of this on CourtTV.com where it's posted. I saw her physically starting to shake and quiver. I thought she was going to go down. I thought she was going to lose it and just faint.
I wish she friggin' fell down and fainted. But okay, wait. Before we have to just let our listeners into what happened before the verdict was read, and that was this jury note that. So this was what? It was during your.
I'm
show.
On the air. I'm on the
You're
air.
on the air past your ending time, right? Because you usually end at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
And it was like after 9 p.m. and there was a note, and the note said they wanted to watch another video, right? It was a video or an audio or something.
They wanted the testimony read back, and the judge said, "Okay, it's going to take a couple of hours. Maybe
I thought it was a video. Okay.
No, it was going to be a readback.
Oh, readback. Okay.
So it was going to take a couple of hours for all of this.
Well, okay. So
for the
this
video and the readback, because they wanted the transcript as well.
Okay, so you're on the air. I'm in my office, like having caffeine intravenously put through my veins so I could stay up just in case I had to be on the television, and makeup cracking away. And then I hear, the note read back, and it's going to take 2 hours. I'm like, great, I'm packing up my belongings, ready to go home. And then there's a verdict.
Right.
So knocking on my door, I get on the set, there's a verdict. Okay, this is my problem, Vinny. What happened? What happened between someone wanting 2 hours of readback to, you know what? Let's just find her.
Well, the judge went to go tell the jury that it was going to take a couple of hours. And the question was, do you want to do it tonight or do you want to come back tomorrow, which was a Saturday?
Yeah.
So now the jury has the choice. Okay, if we want this readback, we stay another 2 hours on Friday night, or we come back on Saturday morning. And sometimes that's enough to convince the jury to take another vote.
Sad. That to me is sad. Listen, do I think she is guilty of murder 100%? I always thought that. But what bothers me is that someone wanted more information. They didn't get the information in a timely fashion. And then instead of a compromise, let's say second-degree murder or a reckless homicide, something less than the first-degree murder, they're just like, you know what? No, I'm good. we're going to go with the murder one. I got to go home because my kid has a softball game tomorrow.
Here's the thing. Some lawyers get very frustrated because you can't control the way a jury deliberates. And that's the way our system's set up. They set the rules. They do it however they
Let me
want.
tell you something.
A jury can go in there.
Let me
What?
tell you something.
What?
This defense team is going to appeal Central based on that issue. I
Sure.
think there is some issue there with the jury wanting something and then perhaps, this undue pressure of, oh, you got to come back on a Saturday.
It wasn't pressure. It was, we can do it now. We
No,
can
it was
do
like
it
a
later.
threat. It was like
It's
a
not
threat.
a threat.
Yeah. Oh, listen, you and I are the only people who want to be at work on a Saturday. They don't want to be doing that. So it was an underlying threat.
I've seen this so many times where a jury sends out a note, and before they get the answer, they send out another note saying we've reached a verdict. The time when all the lawyers are trying to figure out how to respond to a note, the jury continues their deliberations. So maybe somebody said something that was, oh, I didn't think of that, and it was persuasive. You always presume the worst of our jurors.
Why
do you hate these people?
I hate all people.
Why?
Have we met?
Why do you not trust our jurors?
I don't.
These are
I don't
ordinary
like,
people.
I don't like people
doing their civic
I mean,
duty. It's the foundation of our system.
You know me. You know I don't get along with others.
But these are these
so
are real
wait,
people.
Go back, because you did a very nice description of Ezra's convulsing and shaking.
Yeah,
dramatic.
I thought she was going to lose it at that point. And what does that tell me? That tells me she finally realized what she did.
Nope.
And what it means.
Nope. She's just upset that she's going to jail. She's upset she got caught. She doesn't have any realization. She has no remorse. She showed nothing on the stand. Listen, let's just say, just give me a second.
I'll give you a second. You've taken about 2/3 of the show already.
Listen, let's just say Alex Woodworth did attack her, okay? Still, you and I know this. The family members aren't responsible for the bad actions of their loved one, right? So still, when she's testifying, she could have looked out into that audience and shown some compassion for Alex Woodworth's mom or the grandma that I still believe they pulled her from Central Casting because she was just so perfect grandma. So that's my point. Go.
Well, my point is that this was someone who now realized what was going to happen to her. So I think we're actually in agreement on this point, is that at the moment of the verdict, it's all now clicking that I'm not going home. I'm not going back to Racy's coffee shop.
Did she?
I am not back into this crazy world where we just think about things and we don't actually do anything. No, now she's going to do something. She's going to do time. The whole defense here was based upon, it was like a combination of BDSM and PTSD, which resulted in what? GUILTY. That's what it resulted in. Bunch of malarkey.
Do you think, because you know what, I think you were saying that to me on the set when we were waiting for the verdict to come in, you whispered to me something like, oh my God, I think she thought she'd be at Racy's tomorrow.
Yeah. She did. Why wouldn't it? She's able to convince all these men to be with her and to be with her despite being friends
sexually?
With. Yes.
Yeah.
She convinced like her boyfriend's friend to sleep with her and the friend's friend to sleep with her. And it's so I felt like at some point she believed that she had some sort of control over people because she sort of did.
She was like that Black Widow, seductress, murderess.
Yeah, she can make these men pretty much do, or boys, whatever you want to call them,
Sure.
they're young men, do whatever they wanted her to do.
Right. Absolutely.
And she controlled them, but you cannot control a jury ultimately. You just cannot do it. That's why she ended up being found guilty, now facing life in prison. But she may have an opportunity for parole, perhaps.
And she's so young, right? She's only like 22 years old.
22
So hey, the good news is Ezra McCandless may get out, still a relatively young woman.
How's that good news?
Because she'll get a chance to go back to Racy's, reacquaint herself with Jason Mengel, and have a lot more sex. That's always good news. Okay? Now, coming up, we have to talk about the stunning turn of events in California versus Kellen Winslow II, the NFL star. That's next.
For more Court TV, watch it on cable, over the air, Roku, or go to CourtTV.com and stream live gavel-to-gavel coverage. Catch up on the big moments from our current cases and relive some of Court TV's most historic trials. Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Kellen Winslow II, all set to start his retrial. The NFL star, Vinny, what was his position?
He was a tight end.
And he wasn't just any tight end.
No, he was the real deal. It was like
real deal.
A first-round draft pick of the Cleveland Browns, earned over $40 million during his career. Incredible genes because his father was a Hall of Fame tight end. Kellen Winslow II, though, won a national championship at the U. You know which school that is? The
University of Miami.
That's correct, at the University of Miami. And he was the real deal. I mean, he had some injuries that hampered his career a little bit, but did make All-Pro one year.
Okay, so our entire Court TV field team, they're in the courtroom. We're on set, ready to start the retrial. Retrial opening statements set to begin in the morning. Delay. We think it's going to happen in the afternoon, right? It's going to happen all of a sudden, more delay, and then he wants to plead guilty.
It's unbelievable because
unreal.
He's accused of being a serial sex offender. 5 different women victimized by this guy, and all of them saying he did, various different acts,
right.
Everything from rape to sodomy to lewd behavior to sexual battery, all of it. And we were expecting him to go to trial because he has money and he just could not admit that he did anything wrong.
Oh, no. In a million years, I never thought he was going to admit. Now, in the first trial, there were 5 Jane Does. 3 were rape type of accusations, felony accusations involving sex assault. And then 1 was an indecent exposure. And another Jane Doe was a lewd conduct. Now, the misdemeanors, the Jane Doe 3 and 5. Jane Doe 3, which was the indecent exposure, Winslow was found guilty of in the first trial. She was going to testify, or testimony about her was going to come in. The conviction certainly would have hurt him. Jane Doe 5, which was the lewd conduct accusation, that was out. That was severed. So the retrial was focusing on 3 Jane Does, all accusing Winslow of various degrees of sexual assaults, all felonies, serious cases, facing life in prison, right?
Absolutely. One of the cases is from 2003 when he was actually at the University of Miami, but it happened in his hometown in San Diego. And the other 2 were much more recent and involved women who were a little bit older than Kellen Winslow II.
Okay, so now facing life in prison, which is why what this plea deal was so shocking. Take a listen.
You understand that the sentencing range would be a low term. The lowest possible term you could get is 12 years with a maximum possible term of 18 years. And you would present your evidence to the court. Mr. Owens would do the same. And then I would make a decision as to what the appropriate sentence would be. But it would be no less than 12 years and no more than 18 years. Is that your understanding of the plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor. And I pray to God that you give me 12 and I can go home to my family as soon as possible, Your Honor.
Well, keep praying, buddy, because the range is 12 to 18. I don't personally think he's going to get 12. Just to catch up the listeners, he pled guilty to 2 counts in part of this deal. 1 was rape of an unconscious person. This was respect to Jane Doe number 4, which was an accusation from 2003. And then he also pled guilty to the added charge of sexual battery. Now, sometimes what they do, folks, is they add charges so they can take a plea. So they just basically added that charge.
The thing about this plea hearing is what it turned into.
Yeah.
Was he was the most reluctant guilty pleader of all time, if that's even a word. This guy did not want to admit anything and had so much difficulty. And then you just look at his, he didn't even look like himself. His eyes are blinking. His skin is like, I think it was more pale than me.
It's not possible.
It was unreal. He looked sick. He looked confused. And one of the key things for a guilty plea is that it's going to be knowingly, right? Knowingly. And he's got to have his wits about him and understand what's going on. And there were times where he seemed very confused.
Yes.
And very reluctant, and almost as if I don't want to do this. I don't want to admit this, but in the end, he did.
Well, there were two problems I had with Winslow's plea. One is when he said, I guess I have to. Ouch.
Right.
I don't think we should have gone farther from that. And then he also said, I'm not thinking clearly. That to me is call it a day, go home, because the standard is a plea to be taken must be knowing, intelligent, and voluntary. And it didn't seem voluntary. It seemed like I could basically make out a mirage of a gun being held to his head.
But it wasn't. Basically, what they're saying is plead guilty or we just start the trial.
No,
Everybody was
okay.
ready to go.
The jury was outside waiting.
Jury was outside, was selected.
All day.
Prosecutor had his opening statement ready to go. Everybody, everything was lined up. He's facing life in prison if he's convicted of all the charges at the retrial.
This was a gift, no doubt about it. Let's listen to some more of Kellen Winslow's very laborious plea.
Okay, then, Mr. Winslow, let me ask you this. With respect to count 6, which alleges on or about between June 20th, 2003 and June 21st, 2003, you did unlawfully have and accomplish an act of sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 4, a 17-year-old minor, and a person not your spouse, when the person was at the time unconscious of the nature of the act, and this was known to you. How do you plead to count 6? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
And with respect to count 9, which is an added count that alleges on or about March 17th, 2018, you did unlawfully commit sexual battery against Jane Doe number 1, a 54-year-old woman. How do you plead to that? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
I'm sorry?
Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty.
I could just feel
That
it being
doesn't-
forced.
That doesn't make you less guilty, Kellen. The fact that you say it really softly does not lessen the charge or the potential sentence in the
stop being
case.
so mean to him. He pled. All right, relax.
He's a serial sex
I know.
offender.
Okay, so now
I will be mean.
I just want everyone to also understand that the Jane Doe number 2, who was part of this trial, there was one count in the first trial that he was found guilty of, and that was the forcible rape. So basically, the prosecution got justice for all the Jane Does, right?
Absolutely. And he waived his right to any appeals. And to me, that was the key to the whole thing.
Okay, wait.
What do you mean, wait?
I'm telling you, wait. You know what? He could take this plea back. He could try. He could try. He could. He could.
And you know what you get
don't
when you take
believe
the
me?
plea back? You know what you get? You get a trial and you get life in prison. That's what you get. So,
I'm
so
just telling
there's no
you.
great pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for Kellen Winslow II if he retracts his
I
guilty
understand
plea.
it, but what I think it's important that we let our viewers and our listeners understand that just because someone takes a plea, it's always not a done deal. His sentencing is what, February 19th, 2020?
Yes, it's a
Right.
Wednesday, I believe.
You have it marked on your calendar? You're
I
so weird, dude.
Because he's
You're
being sent
so
away.
Weird.
That's right.
No, are you just like at home? You have like this weird court TV calendar where you just mark all your cases and you look at it before you go to bed at night.
Yeah.
You're weird.
That's
You're
a
weird,
day
dude.
where San
It's all right.
Diego
You're
will
a little-
become a little bit safer.
Oh God, trauma. Okay, so my point is, on that day, who knows if he's going to try to get his plea back? And you know what? Before that day, he could be sitting in his jail cell and he goes to the law library and he's like, "Oh yeah, I could do this." And so one of his jailhouse buddies is like, "Dude, take it back, dude, take it back." So then he's going to take his little.
Who's he in prison with?
He's
Spicoli? From Fast Times at Ridgemont High? He's still locked up?
So he's going to go. Listen, I see this all the time. He's going to go and he's going to like write a little handwritten motion to take his plea back.
Right. And this is what happens if it gets taken back. Then he sits in jail waiting for his next trial date, which will take some time, and he'll have no opportunity for a plea. You bring back in all the Jane Does and you convict him, and he spends the rest of his life in prison. Oh, that was really a great move.
I just
Kellen.
want people to understand that even
That was
when
his
you
best move since
waive-
his motorcycle accident. That was his
Right,
best move. Yeah.
Just when people waive their appellate rights, there are still underlying constitutional rights that cannot be waived.
Sure.
That's all. I just want to point that
All
out.
right. A point taken.
All right.
Point taken, but I believe it's over. I think he understands that it's over. Here's the other part of this, and sometimes plea deals get a bad name. And when I threw out on social media, 12 to 18 years, people are outraged.
Yeah.
But there are reasons why the plea deals are actually entered into. There's a reason why they're offered, why they're accepted, and why they keep the wheels of justice churning. We're going to talk about that when we come back.
Court TV is everywhere.
This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
With live gavel-to-gavel trial coverage.
We'll bring you the most compelling trials across our nation.
I am a homicidal maniac.
On the air, online, in your pocket.
You'll see and hear all the evidence.
Can you take the hose and squeeze it?
And streaming free on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV.
The verdict is in.
Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
So Kellen Winslow II takes a plea deal just moments before his trial begins. And I just wanted the folks at home to know, or in your car, wherever you are listening to the podcast, that this is really rare. I mean, in all my years at Court TV, first time around, second time around, this is the first case that we've ever covered, to my recollection, and I will swear to it. I will swear or affirm to it.
Okay.
That a deal came last minute like that. Like sometimes deals are entered into, but it's not right before opening statements.
Now, this all happened during my show, and you were kind enough to put on some pants and get on set with me and help me through it. And you said that to me when this was happening, that it never happened at the old Court
Never
TV.
happened.
So I am surprised. I am very surprised because to me, as a former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, especially as a criminal defense attorney, this stuff happened all the time.
Really? In New York?
Yeah, I think I remember doing a trial outside of New York in a different state. Sometimes I would, pro hoc vice. So you go to a different state, you get a local attorney, they sponsor you, you get to try cases. Oh yeah, that happened to me in Virginia. And I was so upset because I used to love trying cases in different states because it's like a field trip. It's like a field trip. You go, it's a new courthouse, new people.
I want you to try a case in the deep South.
Oh, okay.
It would be like the Indian version of my cousin Vinnie, be my cousin Seema.
Well, I did that, and let me tell you something. I'm not going to say where, but they were all looking at me like, what in the heck are you? What is a Seema? What is an ire? They couldn't get past my name or my physical appearance.
Did they buy your story?
Yes, that case went really well.
See?
That case went really
Once
well. That
again,
was great.
Trust the jury.
That case went really well.
See?
They found me very charming. But my point is that, so I have seen pleas outside of New York, but in New York, and in New York, the jury pool is so large. So like hundreds of people in the audience. And some guy is doing the same thing where he's hemming and hawing and taking a plea. And then finally the jury sent out. And it's excruciating. And I know, and this is so selfish and self-involved, but you know me.
But you are Seema.
That is right. Hello. So I loved trying cases. Like I lived and died to try cases. So anytime a client wanted to take a plea,
You're talking them out of it.
I'm just like, really? We got this far. Don't you want to try? Come on.
Well,
Please.
from my experience in New Jersey, we actually had plea cutoffs, which the judge was
timing.
This was it. This is your last chance for a plea. If you don't, the case is going to trial. There will be no plea. The judge will not accept it. The prosecutor will not offer it. It's off the table. So that's why this was a little foreign to me, because at least where I practiced, there was a time before trial, before you chose a jury, that the plea deal was off. Now, if they wanted to just plead guilty to the charges as they were, you could do that at any moment. You could admit to all the charges, but not get a deal.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. And I think that we should kind of expound on that for everyone. Because when Vinny says plea to the charges, you're saying the top counts. Like if you're going to plead
to everything, whatever the indictment is,
right?
You admit to it.
Right.
You can always change your plea to guilty.
What happened yesterday was this added charge so he wouldn't get life in prison. And basically, Kellen Winslow was pleading to crimes that will allow him to get less than the indictment would. So that is a deal. That
Right,
is a
it's a
plea
deal.
bargain.
Right. So why does this system even exist? It exists because if it didn't, our entire criminal justice system would come to a grinding halt. I mean, from my experience in the prosecutor's office, I would say 90% or more of the cases were worked out through plea negotiations.
Really?
Absolutely.
I think in New York, I don't know. I think it was more like 70%, 75. 90%
really? Of the cases. 90%. And the reason being there's still a backlog because you don't have enough judges, you don't have enough courtrooms, you don't have enough public defenders.
Well, you know that's the case in New York too, very much.
Right.
In the Bronx, it takes years sometimes.
So if there weren't plea bargains, you wouldn't be able to prosecute people because everyone would
God forbid.
No, but if every criminal defendant got together and said, none of us are going to take a deal.
Yeah.
It would back up the system. Everyone is entitled to a speedy trial.
Sure.
You wouldn't be able to get these cases to a speedy trial, and then they would make motions and get charges dismissed. Left and right.
Yeah, left and right. Okay, but I'm telling you, I can't go through what I went through again when he took a plea. It's too much for me. My cardiac arrest level. I can't do it. I wrote an article. Kellen Winslow II, I wrote an article all about you. My whole weekend, Pinot Noir, Skinny Pop, writing about Kellen Winslow II. And then what do you do to me, buddy? You take a plea. It's over.
Well, I look at it this way.
I don't like that.
The victims in this case, 5 victims now.
All serious. Yeah, I'm being serious. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. They all get a slice of justice.
Sure.
They get a conviction based upon their allegations, and they get some closure, not closure, but closure to their exposure to the criminal justice system. They don't have to come to court. They don't have to relive that moment in a very public way through testimony. They don't have to be cross-examined. So from that perspective, it's good. It's 12 to 18, though. He's getting out. So to me, that's an issue because I believe he's a potential danger.
You know, you make a really great point, per usual, and that is the re-traumatization of victims. You know, another case that we're covering is the Weinstein case, and that trial is set to begin in January. And, we've been doing a bunch of interviews and all that. And some of the women I speak to on the phone just to say, hey, this is me and can we sit down and talk? A lot of times, this idea of talking about an incident again is so physically revolting to them that they just can't. I mean, they're really nice. They want to help. They want to help, other women. They want to expose this, but it's that idea of saying the story again. And, some actually, of these victims, they will almost say the event without actually talking about the assault part, right?
The real details of what happened.
Yeah, they won't. They'll say to me, listen, I'll sit
painful.
down. Yeah, I'll sit down and I'll say it happened in this location, in this city. He was here, I was there, but they can't go there again. And this is a perfect example of these women, Jane Doe number 1, Jane Doe number 2, Jane Doe number 4, all accusations of sexual assault. Now they don't have to say it again.
Right. And that's another reason why a prosecutor will take that into consideration in determining what type of deal he will offer or accept if a counteroffer is made by the defense in trying to resolve a case and minimize the damage. But like in this case, in most cases, the prosecution, especially in a sexual assault case or a murder case, will consult with the victims and the victim's family just to gauge how they're feeling about everything. And while they have no control over what a prosecutor can do or what a prosecutor can offer, certainly good prosecutors will listen and take that into account when determining what type of offer, what type of resolution to have in a case that obviously has traumatized either a victim or a victim's family.
I just want to say one more thing about Kellen Winslow's plea, because there's so many people, when it was happening, they were just saying, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything. It's so long. It was so back and forth. I've seen it so many times. And a lot of our guests who come on Corey TV, lawyers, prosecutors, defense attorneys, they were saying the same thing. They were like, it's like any given Monday in the courthouse. Yeah. It happens all the time.
All the time. And folks, by the way, if you like what we're talking about here, you can watch us on television.
We're on the television
every single day of the week. And we're actually available for free if you have a digital antenna.
Oh,
but
here
if
we go.
Here we go. Yeah,
Rescan.
exactly. If you have one of these digital antennas and you've had it for a while, you need to rescan it because Court TV is relatively new. The relaunch of Court TV is new. So we've only been in the airwaves for a while. So we may be new to where you live in your market. So if you rescan your antenna, you can most likely be able to watch us.
Wouldn't that be thrilling?
That'd be great. That'd be great. Well, thank you, Seema, for coming in today.
This was wonderful. And, we have so many big trials, big stories coming up. Check us out, courttv.com. Download the app. Rescan, baby. Rescan.
Absolutely. See you next time.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to courttv.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.